And so one of the speakers who always inspires me, and I'm delighted to be able to present to you today, Therese Solimeno, our licensed Unity teacher.
Thank you, Brian. As I'm getting set up here, let me just tell you that I'm going to talk a little bit about the riveting national paint drawing tournament that I was watching earlier today. It is. It's up to the back to turn up the volume. All right. So actually, we had a board and spiritual teacher retreat a few weeks ago. And one of the things that came up was we would like to do a little bit more about affirmative prayer. And we talk once a month, we say our fourth principle of affirmative prayer, that there is power in meditation and affirmative prayer. And we use that to increase our awareness of God. And so I thought, well, we have prayer chaplains that are here to help pray with people. And we have a concept in the culture about what prayer is. And most of us here probably know what affirmative prayer is. But if you don't, I hopefully will give you a few things to consider on how to look at prayer differently than what the culture typically shows us. And what does the culture typically show us? Someone in distress or fear or some major life crisis, and they start begging. Please God, oh please, oh please, oh please, oh gimme, oh please, oh God, or please do this, okay? And I every time that comes across a screen or a book or something, it makes me just cringe a little bit, because I try to imagine if I were God on the other side, and we know God is not a real human being, but I would just like, and I prefer the image of something I saw in a Jesus Christ Superstar production I saw a couple times. And there's a scene early in the play where Jesus is among his followers, and I can't remember what they're all singing, but basically it's the din of this begging is starting to rise up, and they're getting closer and closer, and they start grabbing at his robe and grabbing at his sleeve. And finally, there's a point where Jesus just throws up his hands and he says, "Heal yourselves." Right? That's in the Bible. Heal yourselves. And that's what affirmative prayer really is. So affirmative prayer is about as opposite of begging as you can get, and there's no begging required when it comes to affirmative prayer, because to understand how affirmative prayer works, we need to just understand what our relationship with God truly is. Okay, so God is not a man in the sky passing judgment on what we do. It's a power, it's a faith, it's a universe. It's so unbelievably indescribable to our human minds that we come up with a lot of different words and we still don't really understand what that is, but we know how it feels. And in Unity, we have assigned attributes to God. So we can't say God is this necessarily, but we say God is love, God is power, God is faith, God is wisdom, God is order, God is imagination, God is law, God is all of these things, God is life. So, and we also know that the elements of God are within each and every one of us already. Didn't have to do anything for it to be there. My favorite analogy is the ocean and the wave. God represents the ocean per se, and it's this big, vast thing that has a lot of different components to it that we'll never really understand, but we are the waves. We are the expressions of that big, vast thing, and each wave is different, but we all contain the elements of the ocean. So if we are waves that contain the element of the big, giant ocean, then within us we have life and love and power and wisdom and imagination and all of these things that God maintains. So what positive prayer does, what affirmative prayer does, it's basically tapping into what already is there. It's just reminding you of who you truly are inside. No begging required. So the method for positive prayer. Probably sounds like a routine from Saturday Night Live, because you might remember there was a character, Stuart Smalley, and he would always say affirmations: I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and damn it, people like me. Well, it's in that same vein of the I am. And why is that? Why is that? And by the way, you don't have to say I am when you're praying affirmatively, but I am is the name that God gives itself in the Bible, in the Old Testament, when Moses asks him, well, who shall I say am I speaking to? And he says, I am that I am. So when we take the Lord's name in vain, it's anytime we take I am and follow it with something negative. So we don't want to follow I am with something negative. I am lazy, I am stupid, I am tired, I am, we want to counteract that. And we counteract that with affirmative statements. In affirmative prayer, we are basically changing our inner selves, not the outer world. And that's worth repeating. Affirmative prayer does not change your outer world. It changes your inner world. And by changing your inner world, by extension, right? We change our energy, we change our attitudes, we change our beliefs, and our world around us changes. Maybe it's just how we see the world around us that changes. But either way, all we can work on is our inner world. If I want Richard to love me more, I'm not going to pray, dear God, please make Richard love me more. Although I'm adorable to begin with, and I know that. The prayer is, I am lovable. And you acknowledge what it is about yourself that is lovable. And you start acting lovable, and whatever that means to your own self and your own personality. And I don't mean intentionally acting, but if you start thinking of yourself as being lovable, then a lot of hurts and slights and things that might get in your way start to go away. If you're having a challenge physically, which we are getting to the stage where that's happening a lot, you come up with affirmations, and your prayer is to counteract whatever belief system is in there that says, I'm getting older, that means I'm getting decrepit. It's not necessarily true. I found some affirmation. I was going through a health challenge many years ago, and I found some affirmations I wrote. And well, they're all varied, but they're all basically praying for the same thing. God's mighty healing power fills me up now. The healing power of spirit saturates every cell of my body now. I radiate perfect health and youthful vitality. I release all disease and discomfort from my being. That's how you pray for healing. Because once you start planting that seed within your own consciousness, then that is what you will manifest in your life around you. Isn't that what the third principle is? Our thoughts create our reality. So affirmative prayer changes your thoughts. It helps to anchor who you truly are. It raises your awareness of the God, that spirit that's already in us. It's not anything that we have to call from outside of us. I use a book, I've studied a book called The Handbook of Positive Prayer by Hypatia Hasbrook. I love her name. She was a Unity minister. And in it, she talks a lot about how to change your thought patterns from the I'm seeking, I'm beseeching, I'm changing what's outside of me, I'm going to a God that's outside of me, and how to change that to something that's what's inside of me. And so when you start to think in terms of affirmative prayer, rather than traditional prayer or supplicant prayer is another way of calling it, then you can start thinking about anything you read can be translated into that. And one of the biggest ones is the prayer of St. Francis. We've seen it here many times. It's a beautiful prayer. It's the, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace prayer. Well, so you all know now, how would we change that? You would affirm, I am an instrument of God's peace. Where there is hatred, I sow love. not let me so love. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is injury, pardon. I do not seek so much to be pardoned as to pardon. So you change everything into the affirmative voice, and that way you are anchoring it into your soul. Now, what is the relationship between meditation and prayer? And Brian's going to do a workshop on meditation for dummies, which I think is great, coming up in May. But the way I look at it, meditation calms the mind and the body. Meditation is a timeout from whatever is happening in this outer world that we're experiencing here on the planet Earth. And if you take the time to just sit for 20 minutes, that's all you need. 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever time you can take in order to devote to your spiritual self. Meditation clears away the weeds that are getting in the way for that day. It helps your body relax. It helps your mind relax. It makes your inner world more receptive. So it's tilling the soil, and affirmative prayer is planting the seed. So you can pray while you're meditating, or not pray while you're meditating. Sometimes meditating is just about listening. What do I need to know today? What do I need to know in order to overcome whatever it is that you'd like to overcome? And you will get an answer because you've cleared all of the stuff out of your space for that 20 minutes or so. But meditation is not the only time you can pray. We pray all the time. We pray all the time. Our language is a prayer. When someone asks you to go dancing and you respond, "I've never been good at dancing," that's basically a prayer. You're affirming something. And if you want that to change, you follow that up with "up until now." Come help me cook. Well, let's all cook dinner. I'm not very good at cooking. Up until now. And it's a way for you to realize how your language is affecting your reality from moment to moment. We are strange beings. We are. I mean, humans are anyway, but it's a reconciliation. What affirmative prayer does is help bring to the forefront the spiritual side of us that gets forgotten or neglected quite a bit in the physical world. And if we are 100% spirit and 100% human, so it's hard to reconcile those two parts of us at all time. In a lot of ways, we are like Mr. Spock, part Vulcan, part human. And oftentimes his logical Vulcan side is in conflict with his emotional human side. And that's kind of what happens with us as spirits having a physical experience on this planet. Our spiritual side gets lost or buried or encumbered by what we see in the physical world. Well, affirmative prayer helps you tap back into what's happening in your spiritual world. That is the long-term gain. That is the long-term eternal part of you that will keep going no matter what else is going to happen in the next experience that we have. And sometimes that's all it takes, is to take a moment, just a moment, to remind yourself, I am a spiritual being having a physical experience. And nothing that you see in this world is going to interfere with that. And actually, that is what is called a denial. We don't talk about denials as much as we did when I first started studying in Unity, but denials are basically a statement that discount the effects of what's appearing to happen around us. So one of the best denials, I mean, it's just an all-purpose denial, is no persons or conditions can keep me from my highest good. That in itself is a prayer. But if you have to remind yourself, if you're coming up against physical health obstacles or people obstacles or financial obstacles, no physical or outer conditions can keep me from my highest good. Your highest good is there to be had if you just continue to work towards that, you know, your higher self is guiding you at all times. So I wanted to share just a couple of affirmations that I like. I like the um, I radiate perfect health and youthful vitality. In fact, sometimes just to be a little stinker, someone will say, "Hi, Therese, how are you?" And I'll say, "I radiate perfect health and youthful vitality." Um, but it's a reminder on those days when I get out of bed and it feels like this, you know. And it, now that I've done it so many times, it's like, are you radiating perfect health and youthful vitality in this moment? I don't think so. And it automatically makes me stand up and you know, so and that's another thing about affirmative prayer is using words that have images. You know, yes, I am healthy and vital. That's a good affirmation, but I radiate perfect health and youthful vitality. What's the imagery of that? I can just see the rays of energy coming through me and going out. And the more descriptive you can be in your affirmations, the better it is. You feel it, you experience it, you visualize it, you use your power of imagination to actually see it. You know, it's pretty famous, the story of uh, Myrtle Fillmore, when she heard the speaker saying that you know, you don't inherit illness, she saw her cells getting healed from her lifelong tuberculosis. She was about 40 about that time, 40 years of suffering from tuberculosis. She didn't just see it, she owned it. She talked to her cells. She said, "I'm so sorry for underestimating your power to heal yourself." I mean, this woman was amazing. But she didn't do anything differently than what we could do if we are in the right frame of mind and tell ourselves enough time and use the right words. And I'm using a lot of qualifications, but you know, sometimes there's this joke about God answers every prayer, but sometimes the answer is no. We may think we're praying for something in the perfect love, the perfect wallet, the perfect job, the perfect relationship with my sister-in-law, the perfect relationship with my daughter-in-law, whatever it is, we think that's what we're praying for. If you actually keep your prayers a little bit more general about, I am a kind and loving being in all ways and at all times, then maybe that's not what you're praying for. Maybe being a kind and loving being is what you're really praying for. And all the other things that are happening in your life either won't matter as much or they'll get resolved because you're changing your energy. The use of active words, it shows up in Charles Fillmore lived to be 94. His goal was immortality, but you know, he didn't quite make it there. But in his 90s, he came up with an affirmation that is so descriptive, we're still repeating it 70, 80 years later. And it is, I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm to do the things that are done to be done by me. He's sizzling. He's not, I'm going to do this. It's, I'm sizzling with enthusiasm. So if you can find that kind of prayer that gets you sizzling, you know, to get you radiating, that gets you expressing. And if not, I am XYZ is fine too. So I have an extra copy of this book, and I'm happy to give it to whoever would like to have it. I think there was only one place I made a notation to change the words from "you, God." I personally do not address God outside of me, because for me, I want to remember that God is an energy, is a force within me. Not everybody needs to do that. Some people will say when they pray, "Dear Father, Mother, God," or you know, Lord, or something that's outside. But and that's fine. You know, as whatever makes you feel comfortable about how your relationship with Spirit works is perfect. But for me, I don't start prayers that way. And if you listen to when I do prayers, say in a group setting or whatever, it always starts with, I give thanks, or I see this, or we see this. I also encourage you that if you're ever going through any kind of prayer need, or even if you're not, to call Silent Unity. Silent Unity has mastered affirmative prayer clearly because they do the daily word every day, and those are all affirmative prayers. And anytime you call them, they're reminding you of the status that already exists in your life. It's not something outside of you that you're praying for. You already have this. And so I want to just finish up or follow up with the idea of praying for others. So that's when we pray for ourselves. We are changing our own energy so that our inner world comes out and expresses in our outer world. And if we do believe that what we think and what we say attracts like kind, then we change our energy, we change our thoughts and patterns, and we will attract the things that we want that are compatible with that. You will see immediately when there's something that comes into your life that doesn't quite fit with how you see your life and what it's about. And it can be a time saver, especially in my case. I think I lasted on one job for 3 days because it wasn't exactly what I wanted, and I went, okay, let's not waste anybody's time here. But next time it won't take me 3 days. Next time I'll know when I even look at the job description. You know what I mean? Like the more you do this, the more aware of who you are and what you're looking for and what your life is really all about will be so evident that you won't have to clutter it with stuff that that doesn't fit. Now, what happens when we pray for others and with others? So, as prayer chaplains and as individuals, because we can all do it, there might be someone that comes to you and they're in deep crisis and they want some prayer support. What we're doing there really is helping them affirm their truth. First thing you do is just listen. Listen, what is it they're really saying? They're having a tough time with their daughter. They're having a tough time with some situation. What is it that you want to help them, support them, that situation for? So praying for others is not necessarily what you think it's about. It's listening to them and to realizing what are they really asking for? Maybe they're asking for patience. Maybe they're asking for more love. Maybe they're asking for validation of their position. But whatever it is, you bring it to their highest good. So we hold hands with the person that we pray with, and we affirm. Well, we see everything in perfect and divine order, which sounds like an excuse, but it's not. Everything always is in perfect and divine order in that moment. And when you want to raise yourself out of a certain situation, then you raise your consciousness beyond what the appearances of that moment is. Is that making sense? And when we pray as a group for others, our collective energy is what's going to change. It's no lie. That's not the right word, but in the lyric of the peace song, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Everything begins with me. Everything begins with you inside, what's happening inside. So if we as a group collectively change our energy and what we're focusing on, imagine if it's not peace, it could be love, it could be forgiveness, it could be compassion, it could be understanding. But the power of 1 million people raising their consciousness and changing that energy from something negative to something positive and affirmative can transform the world, and it often has. So when we pray for other people, their work is to say what I think I'm going to pray for, but our work is to say we see the highest good. We see perfection. We see divine perfection in this moment and in this situation. That's what we're helping them pray for. That's what we're praying for outside of us. So it's still an inside job. So if I leave you with no other thought today, it's the idea that traditional prayer seeks to change the outer world, and affirmative prayer seeks to change the inner world. And that's where all that's where all the really good stuff happens, is inside. I have on occasion needed to remind myself not to get too disturbed by what I see outside. And so there's an affirmation that I heard when I was taking my first metaphysical class at Unity. And it's long and it's cumbersome, but for some reason it stuck with me. I am poised and centered in the Christ spirit, and all things contribute to the calm peace of my soul. And oftentimes people will say, I'm disturbed by this situation, that situation. And I'll say, well, then just pray for the calm peace of your soul. Sometimes that's all it is. Whatever else is going to happen, pray for the calm peace of your soul. Pray for inner comfort. Pray for knowing that you're okay in this moment. Because if nothing else, if we can't change anything else through prayer, we can certainly change how we see what's happening in this moment. Serenity now, I believe, is how Frank Costanza would pray it. And so I want, and there's so much to this. I hope I just gave you enough to help you change your perspective on our relationship with God and our relationship to prayer. And if you want to get on your knees and pray, that's fine. It's not necessary. What that is really a symbol of vulnerability and openness to whatever the answer that comes to you. Sometimes we don't like the answer that comes to us. Sometimes it means quitting a relationship. Sometimes it means changing a habit we've had for 50 years. But if we are open and receptive, that position of humility is a good way to start. But it's not necessary. There are times when, I want to walk around and just say, I'm a child of God. God is fantastic. God is wonderful. God is power and life and all these wonderful things. That means I am too. Then there are other times where it's like, okay, I'm sitting in an airplane and the kid over here is screaming and crying, and all I can sit there is going, I am poised and centered in the Christ spirit. All things contribute to the calm peace of my soul. And that's how it works in our daily lives. So I'm going to read. There are lots of books on this. Like I said, Hypatia has books, Powers of Positive Prayer. There's another one I absolutely love because I love him. It's Prayer, the Master Key. John Dillett Freeman, who is the poet laureate of deceased now. But and actually, I was delighted this morning when I went to this to find this reference. It is inscribed by Mr. Freeman to Bob. He came to San Luis Unity in 1995 and gave a talk. And by the way, this is his position. This is how wonderful he is. Mr. Freeman, not Bob. This is his inscription. To Bob, who helped me speak by being such a good responder. I just love that. I love that even as his, the center of attention, he was about giving to other people. Anyway, this is a wonderful book. It's more of a parable. A lot of it he talks about this master and the student. But this is part of a poem that he wrote, or a section he wrote, called The Key Called Prayer. Life has set me down in the middle of a mystery, but life has given me a key. The key is in my own mind. The key may not take me to the end of the mystery, but it takes me to the beginning. Having begun, I can go on. Having taken the first step, I can see to take the next step. The key life has given me, I call prayer. Prayer focuses thought on God the way a compass keeps the needle turned to north. If I am a traveler, I carry the compass with its needle turning always towards north, not only when I want to go north, but so that wherever I have to go, I can always find the way. And that's the key. Prayer, affirmative prayer is the key. No matter what is happening in your life, when you pray affirmatively, you can always find a way. And that's my wish for you today. Thank you for listening.